Alright, so I've been seeing a lot of videos lately about people 3D printing their own mice, and wanted to try this out just to ascertain if it's actually worth it, but also to try and figure out what I'm actually looking for in a mouse. So perhaps you've experienced this yourself, you purchased a new one and it's not perfect, but it's also not worth the hassle of returning it. So in this little side project, I came to some interesting conclusions on what I'm actually looking for, and it's definitely worth a try. We'll need some tools for this, mostly measuring equipment, like this radius gauge set, a small screwdriver set, alongside a caliper. And this one's actually from my great-granddad. It's over 40 years old, believe it or not. So here's the mouse we'll be using, the Razer Viper Mini. It's got decent internals, but you can probably tell this isn't the best ergonomically for my hand. It's also quite slippery, which I find somewhat strange. You'd think that grip would be the most important aspect on one of these things, but something that Razer just completely ignores on most of these budget options. It is incredibly cheap though. I picked this up for 15 euros. It's not wireless, but I actually don't mind this, as the cable on this thing is really lightweight. So we'll start by taking the thing apart. Now, both these things, the slippery nature alongside the ergonomics, actually only occurred to me when I was designing my own. And that's something you can definitely take away from this project. If you choose to do something like this yourself, the least that you can expect from it is more understanding on what you're actually looking for in a mouse. Anyway, the internals on this thing are surprisingly small and actually quite rudimentary. Something I never really understood was how mouse wheels actually work, so it's just resting on a button while the other side is in a rotary encoder. When I first saw that in Cam's video, I was probing the possibility of creating a 3-button layout and linking that middle button to something useful in-game, but that got kind of scrapped later on as I got carried away with another idea. With it out of the body, I started designing the baseline structure. It's pretty simple, just adhering to the internals of the original, and I was truly winging it. I mean, most of the time this bites you later on in the process. Yeah, I guess sometimes you get kind of lucky, and by winging it, I mean just measuring one part of the body, taking a picture of the original mounting plate, using that to gauge the other distances. So definitely not an accurate way of measuring stuff. I did double check with a caliper, but not in a way where it would be useful, which is kind of funny to look back on. Now, this baseline design is really quite rudimentary. Later on in the process, I always go back to clean up anything that we don't need. Now, a CAD program that I can definitely recommend is Shaper 3D. It's free for students like myself, and it's incredibly intuitive to use on an iPad, yet still advanced enough to where you can create anything you want. Now, there's definitely a curse to getting things spot on the first time, as you won't know what can go wrong later on in the process, which we'll get back to later on, but at the moment everything is working fine. So I started modeling again, but it wasn't really turning into anything unique, and at this point I kind of remembered back to a print project I did a little while ago, where I reheated PLA to bend it, and it's a really fun thing to do, as you can mold it into some pretty unique shapes. So I thought it would be interesting to implement that on this design. Now, initially I made some slits to accommodate the folding pieces, but that got scrapped as I realized it would be way cooler if you printed this from a single piece. After a while of fiddling around with this stuff, I came up with something that I thought would both support my palm and be the mouse button at the same time. After the fact, I realized this was probably also inspired by Optimum's video, but I didn't really realize that at the time. And again, after messing about with some paper, I just took a picture of it and very quickly sketched something out. This makes the design process a little less predictable, as you're never really certain what it's going to look like, right? But during modeling, you kind of imagine this thing bending into place. At least that's kind of how it works in my head. Now, often in projects like this, it kind of hinges off of ignorance. So if you overthink things from the start and worry about how much time it's going to cost, you'll never really build anything. So a tip from me would be to get yourself invested before you start worrying about anything, and that's worked out perfectly for me over the years. Now, I wanted to check if it was working out so I wouldn't ruin a bunch of filament later on, and I made a little test piece here. The nice thing about this is that this PLA can be recycled after the fact, so it's a very low waste method of prototyping. Now, I'm unsure if the water has any negative effects on the durability long term, but I've never noticed any degradation. It's really fun to do as well. You have like 3 seconds to put it into position and then it's solid again. It feels kind of like that spoon bending scene in The Matrix for some reason. Now, I was about 2 hours into the project at this point and already had decent clicks, a nice design, which kind of made me doubt myself because this isn't how it usually goes. Anyway, after all that mucking about, I got the idea in my head that I wanted it to look somewhat like a Wraith stealth cruiser. That's kind of like that biological design. So now that we have stuff kind of dialed in, I think we should really start with the final output. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be 100% accurate because we'll be melting it into place, and any minor errors that occur in the design process can be corrected after the fact. If you're enjoying the video so far, consider subscribing and let me know in the comments how much coffee you drink. I chug down one of these per day. It's about 1 litre, and I find myself consuming way too much food if I don't, so either way it's kind of unhealthy. Now, if my print bed was a little larger, I would have definitely given it some more length, but after the fact I actually came to the conclusion that it's perfect, so I attempted a little Scott shot. If you don't know Scott, he's got a really cool YouTube channel. And after melting, bending, putting the optical insert in place, screwing the whole thing together, some words of motivation to my computer. Honestly, I can't wait to get rid of you. We had ourselves an issue. Alright, check this out. That is the cursor right over there. This is the mouse. You see how it's jittering? Now it's not doing anything. In the heating process, the base also bended, and this resulted in a rather sensitive sensor not actually working. I was actually quite shocked at how temperamental this thing was, but after some reheating with a lighter, we actually got ourselves an ultra lightweight gaming mouse, which is actually pretty cheap to construct, and honestly, it's about the ugliest mouse I've ever seen, but I don't really mind that. Now, the mouse definitely has some flex to it. I'm unsure if that's a bad thing, but while that stuff was printing, I did secretly model a different design to kind of check out Optimum's take on this, as he had made an ultralight version of this. And I think his design is far better, as ergonomics doesn't necessarily mean support for your palm. It's more about where your fingers are placed and how you operate the mouse. So surprisingly, I'm claw grip, which I never knew, but after building this pretty rudimentary test thing, I can safely say that I'm probably going to be making some more iterations to test other designs. Now, the mouse weighs in at just under 50 grams, and you can definitely get that down if you go for the more rudimentary design.